2022 was a big year for podcasting, and according to ChatGPT, it's only going to get better in 2023. So I had a conversation with ChatGPT, which, by the way, if you're not familiar, ChatGPT is basically like an artificial intelligence chatbot. If you're old school like me, and if you remember playing or chatting with Smarter Child, if you ever got on AOL Instant Messenger back in the day, there was this chatbot you could talk to called Smarter Child, and you could ask it questions, and it would give you reasonably realistic responses, like human-like responses, but it was very limited. It couldn't recall parts of your conversation. Like it couldn't, it would basically like a direct response to your question, kind of one-to-one interaction, if that makes sense. ChatGPT is way more advanced, and it can recall previous things in your conversation. It can give super long, in-depth suggestions and responses to your queries. You can ask it, you can give it a prompt, and it can write you full stories. I think I asked my 11-year-old son, to give ChatGPT a prompt for a story. And I think he said something like, write me a story about Ronald McDonald eating Lysol wipes or something bizarre like that. And ChatGPT wrote an entire story with a beginning, a middle, an end, a whole plot, everything. And it was incredibly bizarre. But anyway, it's OpenAI's ChatGPT. So go check it out if you haven't. Moving on, I asked ChatGPT to tell me about some podcast trends to look out for in 2023. So I have its results. I don't know what you call it. I guess just it, right? I have its results written down here. So I'm going to read through these and then and comment on some of these here as we go. There's 10 total trends that it gave me. In fact, it gave me 5. And then I said, can you be more specific? And then it gave me 5 more. So this is what ChatGPT said about podcast trends for 2023. First off, continued growth in popularity. Podcasting has experienced significant growth in recent years, and this trend is likely to continue in the coming years as more and more people discover the medium and start listening to podcasts on a regular basis. We've seen that in 2022 and in previous years. I think 2022 again was a big year for podcasting, and I would fully agree with that. Number 2, increased use of artificial intelligence. Oh, shocking! An artificial intelligence would suggest that it's going to be more useful with podcasting in the new year. It says AI and machine learning technologies are being used in a variety of ways in the podcast industry, such as to transcribe audio, generate transcriptions, and even create new content. This is new content that AI created right now. It is possible that these technologies will become more widely adopted and integrated into the production of podcasts in the future. The way that people are talking about AI and ChatGPT right now, I 100% agree with that. I think, again, this was, if I'm being completely honest, this portion of this episode was a layup for me. All I had to do was go type a couple things into ChatGPT, and I'm reading what it gave me. So, call me lazy, I guess, if you want, but this is probably going to be more prevalent in podcasting and just content creation in general. Number 3, greater use of multimedia. Most podcasts are already incorporating multimedia elements such as videos and images into their episodes. This trend is likely to continue as more podcast creators look for ways to engage their audience and stand out in a crowded marketplace. Just think about how far podcasting has evolved. It started as audio only. You almost can't call podcasts anymore in a sense, because it's a little bit of everything. You've got audio, you've got video, you've got micro content. There's so many ways that you can just expand your content mix now when it comes to podcasting. So where does the podcast end and the rest begin? I don't know, but I would agree with ChatGPT here. I think it's only going to continue to evolve as far as how people are, the creative ways that people are incorporating other types of media into podcasts. Number 4, more diverse and inclusive content. The podcast industry has been criticized for a lack of diversity and inclusivity, and it is possible that we will see more podcasts that feature diverse voices and perspectives in the coming years. Has podcasting really been? I guess so. I guess it's been accused of not being as diverse. But if you remember back in episode 106, I went over a report from a company called AdLarge, and they were talking about diversity in podcasting and how it's becoming more diverse. For example, 58% of 18 to 44-year-olds in the United States said that they listened to podcasting in the past week. So the younger audiences are coming into the podcast world, but also 41% of listeners happen to be non-white. That compares to 76% of the US population, which is white. So again, the podcast audience is more diverse, which is probably an indication that, people who produce podcasts, that audience, or, those people are going to become, that group is going to be more diverse as well. I think, it's just the natural progression of things. If you have a diverse group of people engaging or listening to a certain type of content, they're probably more likely to become involved in that as well. So again, I agree with ChatGPT. I think we will see more diversity in the world of podcasting. Number 5, you have greater monetization efforts. As the podcast industry matures and becomes more competitive, it's likely that creators will look for more ways to monetize their content, such as through sponsorships, merchandise, and premium subscription models. I think this is just a natural progression, not just with podcasting, but just with content creators in general. It's interesting how content creators have been able to turn being a creator into a full-on, business. And the ways that some of these creators are monetizing is very interesting. So yes, I agree. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves again in the podcasting world in 2023. Number 6, greater focus on long form content. While many podcasts are relatively short, there has been a trend towards larger, more in-depth content in recent years. This trend is likely to continue as more listeners seek out podcasts that provide a deeper dive into a particular topic or issue. The aforementioned Lex Fridman podcast is a very long form. You have the Joe Rogan podcast, which has been around for years. I really like the kind of sit down conversational, just very laid back style podcast. That's personally me, but I'm curious how long that will keep people engaged, because I think the more that people do that, the more that people kind of take on that format, the more saturated it's going to get, and then people are going to kind of have to figure out new ways to keep people interested. Maybe I could be wrong about that, but I do think there's a lot of value right now in the long form format. So interesting to see. We should revisit these. I'll have to keep these written down, and at the end of 2023, see how many of these actually came true. Number 7, increased use of podcasts for marketing and advertising. Podcasts have become an increasingly popular medium for brands to reach consumers, and it's possible that we will see more companies using podcasts as marketing and advertising platforms in the future. Again, going back to episode 106 in that AdLarge report, in 2021, U.S. podcast revenues exceeded $1 billion for the first time. In fact, they reached $1.4 billion. And 54% of marketers surveyed said that they plan to increase their podcast investments. It already seems like that's happening. Companies are definitely seeing the value of advertising when it comes to podcasts. So I would agree there. Number 8, more podcasts produced by traditional media organizations. In recent years, we have seen an increase in the number of podcasts produced by traditional media organizations such as news outlets and radio stations. It is possible that this trend will continue as these organizations look to expand their reach and take advantage of the growing popularity of podcasts. Of course, we've seen that a lot. We've seen that everywhere. I think just as companies started, jumping on social media when social media grew popular, they're going to do the same with podcasts. They already have, and they're going to continue to do so. If there's an opportunity for a company to get their message out more broadly through something like a podcast, they're going to do it. That seems pretty self-explanatory. Number 9, greater focus on podcast production quality. As the podcast industry becomes more competitive, it's likely that creators will place a greater emphasis on production quality in order to stand out and attract listeners. This could involve investing in better equipment, hiring professional editors and producers, and generally putting more effort into the overall production of their podcasts. The more competition that you have, the harder it is to stand out. And podcasting has become very saturated, very popular. You have a lot more people entering the industry. So yeah, of course, you're going to have it's going to be harder to stand out there. So creators are going to have to do something, whether that's just really give a boost to the quality of the content, or again, try to increase their production value with, whether that be through lighting and cameras and audio and things like that, or with the actual editing and images and things like that, like the final edit of the podcast itself. I think it's going to have to happen. And there's a lot of people that are doing really interesting things with podcasts. So it'd be interesting to see where that goes. And finally, number 10, more use of interactive and immersive elements. Some podcast creators are experimenting with interactive and immersive elements in their shows, such as using branching narratives or incorporating live events. It is possible that we will see more podcasts incorporating these types of elements in the future as creators look for ways to engage their audiences in new and innovative ways. Yeah, live events. I would concur with that. Again, it just comes down to, I think the competitiveness is really what's going to drive the innovation in podcasting. Podcasting is already popular. It's going to continue to grow in popularity. People are going to have to do some really interesting and cool things to stand out and make a mark in the industry. And, finding ways to use more interactive and immersive elements, as ChatGPT says. I think that'll be very important. But there you go. There's 10 podcast trends for 2023 to look out for. Just remind me at the end of the year, we'll come back and revisit these and see how right ChatGPT was.